Do you condemn the attacks on ICE agents?
What attacks on ICE agents?
So here we go again. It's like having deja vu from 2 weeks ago, because we are once again going to witness blue anon liberal conspiracy theorists engage in some of the most insane mental gymnastics you will ever see. These people might as well enter the Olympics at this point. Because after this morning, we saw the shooting at the Dallas ICE facility, which, according to all current evidence and accounts, does appear to be a politically motivated left-wing terrorist attack, whether you want to talk about the forensic evidence, the anti-ICE engravings written on bullet casings left at the scene in a identical fashion to what Tyler Robinson did 2 weeks ago, or the fact that the way the shooting was carried out is also a copycat of Tyler Robinson. The guy got on top of a roof using what appears to be an old rifle to take long-range shots at a right-wing target, after all, or the fact that currently journalists on social media are digging up who he was, IDing who the family is, and saying, hey, these people do all appear to be pretty heavy left-wingers. Now, take that aspect with a grain of salt, because that's not verified, but the reason I'm mentioning it is because, again, everything is pointing, indicating in one direction. And what are left-wingers, both online, but this time even in the media, trying to speculate? Well, obviously, this guy who committed a shooting at an ICE facility must be a right-winger. And some of the evidence they used for that included the fact that the people who actually got hit by the bullets were migrant detainees, not the ICE agents, which to me was never evidence of anything, but it has since come out that the reason that happened is because he was shooting at one of those unmarked cars, the SUVs that are carrying the migrants into the facility, and he was just kind of firing indiscriminately, didn't really know what he was aiming at, and ends up hitting the migrants. So even that argument has already fallen apart, and I further brought up on this point in our last video, which we kind of laid out the details in full there, but why would a white supremacist, who according to them wants to target Latinos or illegals or something like that, go after an ICE facility? Because first of all, those people are already about to be deported. Secondly, it's not exactly a soft target, right? It's heavily armed with federal agents with M16s, AR-15s all over the place. What are you thinking, right? The only reason you would go after an ICE facility and go through that headache and that trouble is because guess what? You want to target ICE. Like, it really is common sense. But that said, I want to walk you through this full timeline, especially on MSNBC today, who tried to speculate that white supremacy could clearly be the inspiration for why someone would want to attack ICE. And then moments later, when, it's kind of revealed, hey, here's what was written on the gun, here's what authorities seem to think, immediately is forced to backtrack, and then still, though, in the process, make ridiculous excuses for it, right? They still don't want to claim it as left-wing. They're just going to, now we don't know, guys. We were speculating white supremacists, now we don't know, but look, let's not rush to conclusions, blah, blah, blah. What is this all about? And I've been calling this out, whether it's from MSNBC or the Democrat Party itself, although they're basically one and the same, is that instead of just simply saying we condemn political violence and it has to stop, the left-wing strategy here is to basically deny and deflect, right? The political violence is happening because of Trump. Trump needs to tone down the temperature. Oh, Antifa, that's not even real. We don't know the shooter's motive, blah, 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 right? I think the DNC needs a new acronym there. How about disinform, neglect, cheat? That's what these people are all about, and that's exactly why they're playing all the mental gymnastics. They're jumping through all the hoops to try to distract you from the fact that this is obviously what happened here, instead of taking accountability, because they never will do that for anything. And that's how they allow themselves to have this plausible deniability of oh, Antifa doesn't represent the Democrat Party. The radical communists don't, because we condemn violence. But do you condemn them? No, they'll say Antifa's not real, right? So we'll get into this. We'll show you this full chronicle here today. It's rather ridiculous, and yet another example of everything I've been talking about in terms of how the Democrat Party and mainstream neoliberal institutions basically run cover for the radical violent communists time and time again, but then claim that's not what they're doing. So we'll get into it, guys. Do us a favor, though. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And that said, I want you to take a listen to MSNBC's coverage this morning, where they try to attribute white supremacy as the potential inspiration for this shooting, again, at an ICE facility. Okay.
Of those attacks.
Chris,
Coming back to rooftop trend, coming back to engraving trend, what do you make of that? Does that suggest people are being inspired? Are you worried about copycats?
Yes. I don't know if the rooftop trend is going to be a thing. I mean, it could just be coincidental that the best vantage point just happened to be elevated positions in this case. But people emulating this kind of attack is certainly a concern. The irony with the writing, the first time we really saw that was Brenton Tarrant in the Christchurch shooting in a mosque in New Zealand, and he was a fierce, white supremacist and neo-Nazi, and wrote all over his weapon and his rounds, very hateful information. So to see this coming from, potentially the other side of the political spectrum is a little strange, because it is not something, if you are trying to, carry out some kind of message countering, more extreme right-wing stuff, I don't know why you would, use a tactic that a famous white supremacist who has been revered and copycatted over the years by other white supremacists, why you would do that. But
right, so there you heard apparently a former FBI official. Sounds like, is he trying to be a little conspiratorial about that, right? Bringing up, hey, bullet engravings, that's something that white supremacists do. Are you sure? It's kind of scratches your head strange that a white supremacist would do that, right? I don't know. Does that also mean we should investigate Tyler Robinson for white supremacy? I'm not exactly sure. Frankly, I don't think it's all that strange. I don't think the white supremacists or right wing or whatever ever owned the idea of, hey, if you're going to commit a terror attack, you want to leave behind a message. I mean, that's just what terrorists in general do. I don't understand the point there. But then it gets more direct here. Okay, again, the mental gymnastics you're about to hear. We did play this clip in the last video, but I want to show you again to illustrate our point today about MSNBC. Take a listen as this law enforcement analyst says, quote, you can't just assume the ICE shooter was a leftist based on the anti-ICE because, again, he could have been doing it thinking it was funny, trying to put law enforcement on the wrong track. So, and by the way, they did the same thing with Tyler Robinson, right? They were like, oh, Bella Ciao, hey, fascist catch. Maybe that's a huge diversion tactic. Maybe it was actually a right-winger. Maybe this is all staged, it's a false flag or something, and they just did that to confuse us. What did we hear, right? He was a far-right griper, which is why he's writing anti-fascist slogans on the gun, but they didn't like Charlie Kirk because they're far-right. Again, totally ridiculous, totally insane. But that said, take a listen here to the gymnastics, okay? Mr. Simone Biles himself.
You can't just assume by that what was written on that shell casing that's necessarily his motivation. He could have been doing that to thinking it was funny, trying to put law enforcement on the wrong track. This is where when you analyze the person's phone, computer, talk to his family and friends, that you get an idea of what his motivation perhaps really was.
Now, as a total good faith individual, is what he is saying technically possible? Yes. There's a reason why I've said alleged left-wing terrorist appears to be and not is, because we don't have the 100% confirmation. However, you understand what you're doing is seriously reaching, right? It's a really far out conspiracy to say, oh, someone who attacked an ICE facility was actually a right-winger, and they staged it all as this false flag to make it look like the left was violent, and then blah, blah, blah. It's, tinfoil hat stuff. Possible, yes. But I'd say about a 1% chance that's the case. About a 99% chance the obvious thing is clear after a long trend of left-wing violence and terrorism you have been seeing across America. It's just another example of that. And that's exactly what MSNBC and CNN were both forced to kind of do in terms of the damage control. Because take a listen to later as the FBI indeed points out, yes, early evidence shows that the suspect contained those very anti-ICE messages. And then suddenly he wasn't such a white supremacist anymore. So take a listen.
Got there. What was your top takeaway listening?
Well, one other clarification, Anna, which is that they're now saying that one person, in addition to the shooter, was killed, not two. So one person killed, two injured, in addition to the shooter, if I heard that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
that's what I got, too. Two people deceased, including the shooter.
Okay, and look, I think the bullet casings engraved with anti-ICE messages is a huge and key revelation in this case, because this is now the third instance of targeted violence where we're seeing that. Obviously, the Charlie Kirk assassination and the Luigi Mangione alleged killing of the United Healthcare CEO in New York being the others, and so that suggests that there's a copycat phenomenon going on here.
Okay, wait, but targeted violence by who? Who is committing the targeted violence? What political side? Who do they affiliate with? The other side is all they're saying, right? Keeping it intentionally vague. No, there's a common theme here in all of it, which is you could talk about certain mental issues, the way they're doing these things, who they're targeting, but ultimately what's shared here, generally a similar ideology. That's what's going on.
And the fact that they're investigating this as a potential act of targeted violence, I think we can conclude that ICE was targeted here based on that piece of evidence. That is extremely significant, and just cast this in a new light and suggest that this is the latest in a series of incidents that really underscore the problem that we are experiencing right now in this country with politically motivated violence. And you heard the Senator Ted Cruz there talking about dialing down the
politically motivated by who, MSNBC? Huh? Who?
Rhetoric. That is a perfectly reasonable thing to say, but this issue of immigration and what ICE is doing in communities is incredibly divisive, and it's hard to imagine really that people are going to stop feeling as strongly as they do about it. But we all need to be mindful of the fact that look, people are being attacked and killed as a result, perhaps, of some of this rhetoric. So those were my takeaways.
Yeah, Rosa, one of the things we heard repeatedly from a number of different officials is this has to stop.
Okay, again, motivated by who? What has to stop? This is something I've been pointing out extensively about Democrats responding, whether it's Charlie Kirk or other situations, which is you have to notice the intentional vagueness they constantly speak in, right? The tactical ambiguity, some people would call it. What did they say after Charlie Kirk was assassinated? We condemn violence. Then mainstream media gave them a bunch of credit. Oh, the Democrats are calling to turn down the temperature. But I said, no, wait a minute. You can vaguely say you condemn violence, but when you won't acknowledge the reality of what actually happened, what are you condemning? Like, it's kind of half-hearted, is it not? But then furthermore, the very precise reason why they will never condemn what is actually radical left violence or the fringe lunatic activists who are committing this type of stuff is, of course, because the Democrat Party is protecting those people. Like, make no mistake, if this was a far-right extremist, they wouldn't be calling it politically motivated violence. They would say it was white supremacy. They would name and shame exactly what they're talking about. The reason they talk with such vagueness when it comes to the left, of course, is because, as I pointed out, the Republican Party and the far right do not have this relationship. Let me just first say that, right? You will constantly hear Republican politicians rushing to condemn white supremacy, to say we don't associate with neo-Nazis, right? They're not welcome, for instance, at the RNC or mainstream Republican events because there is no relationship between the two. However, in the context of the DNC and the Democrat Party, you notice that. When Trump, for instance, asked Joe Biden to condemn Antifa back in 2020, what did Biden do? He said Antifa is just an idea. It doesn't even actually exist, and no, I'm not going to condemn it, okay? Right? Basically doing a strategic, masked and blanketed defense, actually, of Antifa is what they're doing there. The same thing with, the BLM rioters, the ICE riots. What did Karen Bass say about those? Right? She said, I condemn violence. However, the reason this is happening is because of Trump, and so we're not really going to take accountability for what's happening. And the reason that is, even if, by the way, one could argue that the Democrat Party hurts itself in its image by refusing to tell the truth or really condemn it, is because they understand these radicals, first of all, are a base of their party, but even to the extent that they're not, right? The real radical leftists, the Antifa, the communist types, the people like Tyler Robinson who were totally estranged and didn't even participate in the political system, still, they're doing their bidding, right? They're essentially acting as the paramilitary force of the Democrat Party. They know that they can intimidate people, even commit violence, do these things, and that is the will ultimately of the Democrat Party. But the Democrats don't have to claim it, right? They're like, oh, that's just some extremist, right? Who is the extremist? Oh, vaguely. No, we're against violence, right? But behind the scenes, who are the bad cops? Who are the enforcers of the party? Who is like the SA or the SS or, the Mao's, little red book people, the student revolutionaries? That's what's going on here. That's exactly what's going on here. And that's why they're so vague about it. That's why they won't name it. That's why political violence is bad. You should be satisfied. Why? No. Say left-wing political violence is bad specifically. Say Antifa is bad. Say that these communist, domestic terror networks need to be identified. No, they don't even exist. What are you talking about? We don't know the motive. Oh, that's Donald Trump's rhetoric. No. Right? Same situation here at CNN, by the way, so take a listen to that as well.
Based on messages being written on the shell casings found near the shooter, who we are told took his own life after the shooting, gives us some now direction as to motive. Anti-ICE messages. We also heard from the ICE official who, making a turn, said, referring to the July 4th shooting you and I were talking about a short time ago at another ICE location from an individual who fired from on the ground, that the rhetoric has to stop, he said. It just has to stop. There is no secret, given the events of the last couple of weeks, that we are in a very brittle time in terms of politics, in terms of rhetoric, and in terms of violence. What we now are hearing from people...
Okay, again, whose rhetoric, whose violence? Because this is not a both sides issue currently.
People briefed on this investigation is the following, which is this was a busy morning. It's prior to 7 a.m. Teams that have been out executing arrests in the early morning hours are coming back in with detainees to this facility, and that one of these, a van, not a van, we are told, from ICE, but from another agency, another federal agency that was out making arrests on behalf of ICE, is approaching that location, and that suddenly, from an elevated location, someone opens fire on that van. Now, Pam, you know these vans. We've seen them before at federal facilities. Typically, these are vans that have tinted windows, so you can't see whether they're occupied or who they're occupied by. I would suspect that that's probably the case in this instance. When someone opened fire on the van, whether they were aiming for the driver or the person in the passenger seat, or they believed that the van might have contained federal agents but weren't able to see. They were, according to the FBI, believed to be targeting federal law enforcement officers when they opened fire.
Ding, ding, ding. They were targeting federal law enforcement officers, and obviously that's what they were doing. It's not exactly a shocking revelation, We really got to the bottom of this one, Sherlock. No. Obviously that's what was going on. And why were they doing it? Well, according to Blue and On here again, as we've seen all throughout this morning, right? Clearly it's because that's what MAGA does. Right? MAGA attacks ICE agents who are doing deportations because they're mad over deportations, guys. Because the right wing is just so violent. That's what they do. They like guns, right, guys? Right? The left wingers don't like guns, so how could we possibly commit violence? Brain dead stuff. Completely brain dead. But again, guys, essentially, there you have it. It appears by everything we know, this guy had a certain political affiliation. And let me say, is not exactly a fan of Trump or ICE, okay? So there you have it. Democrats are still going to claim, first of all, like Jerry Nadler in the beginning, they don't even know that this happened. It didn't happen. It's not real. And then they're going to continue the rhetoric against ICE. And whenever something happens, they're not going to tone it down. They're going to say vaguely they condemn violence, but they're not really doing it because they're still blaming the right for violence. So it's like, if you totally misrepresent something and then condemn it, are you really condemning it? I don't think so. But anyways, there you have it, right? The DNC, disinform, neglect, cheat. There you go. That said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.